Okay, we are live. Good afternoon, early evening, Colorado. I am so excited to have this recap of the 2021 legislative session with two of my very favorite legislators. So first, I want to thank Senator Scott and Representative Perry Will for being here. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking a few minutes of your summer break to talk about some very important legislation. So I want to do a quick bio to introduce Senator Scott, who represents District 7. You've represented District 7 since 2015. And District 7 includes Mesa County, and that covers Grand Junction and nearby communities of Fruita, Palisade, Clifton, and many others. And Senator Scott, you served consecutively from January 12, 2011 until January 9, 2013 in the Colorado House of Representatives, District 54 seat, and from January 9, 2013 to January 7, 2015 in the House, District 55. And you served on the Finance and Transportation and Energy Committees. And you were the assistant majority leader in 2016 and 2018 and Republican whip from 2018 to 2019. So we had a Facebook Live before talking about oil and gas, and that was amazing. You're so knowledgeable, so I'm really excited to continue conversation. And then my other guest today is none other than Representative Perry Will. And Perry represents the 57th District of the House of Representatives, which covers Garfield, Moffat, Rio Blanco counties. And that includes, for those of us who love to go out west, that includes Craig, Glenwood Springs, Rifle, Carbondale, Parachute, and many other towns. You were first appointed to the State House in 2019, and you just won your election in 2020. Congratulations. And you were first assigned to the Health and Insurance Committee in 2019, but you currently serve on the Agriculture, Livestock, and Water Committee and the Energy and Environment Committee. And prior to your appointment to the legislature, you worked in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife for 43 years. So you two gentlemen know Colorado very well. So here we go. You all passed 502 new pieces of legislation. That was what was passed. That's not what was introduced. It was over 600 and I lost count, 623 or more that were actually discussed. That I don't think the average Coloradan understands how many pieces of legislation you guys have to talk about. Each representative or senator is allowed to introduce 5 bills. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that's a lot. That's a lot. But Senator Scott, because I want to be conscious of time, why don't we kick off with you? Why don't we start with a bill that you're really passionate about, that you think Coloradans need to know more about?
Well, first of all, Priscilla, thanks for having us today. And anytime you need us to do these types of things, we're more than willing to do it. And thank you to all the people out there who might be watching or listening. And thank you to my colleague, Perry. He's quite the character. We love him to death. He can't sing and neither can I, so we get along. We get along just fine. And we're both Garfield County guys. So, it's one of those things we're kind of connected. And to your point earlier about the fact we passed 503 or 505, whatever the total number was, that's a massive amount of legislation. I always look at that as being a lot more than what we need. I kind of always have operated in my 11 years on the less is more theory. I think I saw something the other day where I passed 4 bills this year. That's high for me because I don't think we need more laws and regulations and things put on people's Coloradoans' backs, and they got a lot this year. So, and every legislator takes a little different view of that. But anyhow, that's a lot of things happening at once. So it'd be nice if we could talk about 20 or 30 of those measures, but we just don't have time, obviously. I think one of the ones that a lot of people heard about was the infrastructure package, which was the road and bridge package, as they were told, which is really not true. I like to call that bill the Green New Deal for Colorado. That's really what it was. Uh, it was a $5 billion package of multiple layers of things of electric vehicle charging stations, clean air requirements and regulations, uh, transit, lots of buses, lots of rail on the Front Range. And let's be honest, most of the rubber hits the road on the Front Range, so we know where most of that money is going to end up going. Even by CDOT's admission, looking at their spreadsheet, they were going to get $20 million, and they're not going to get that until 2024. Well, just to put that in perspective for people, $20 million doesn't build an overpass over I-25 or I-70. It's not enough money, of course, to do anything. So nothing was really done to fix our transportation needs. And I think that's very important that people understand that. Within that bill was where we heard about a lot of different fees. Fees on gasoline, which is going to happen. We're going to see fees on Amazon. We're going to see fees on Uber rides. We're going to see fees on multiple levels of different consumer needs out there that just aren't necessary. We had a great plan put in place. We wanted to take some of the federal stimulus money, inject that into roads and bridges, and then kind of come up with a transportation savings fund, and then kind of feed that fund over the next decade, if you will, to really get things done on Colorado's roads and bridges. And it's a real shame that just didn't happen. It's very unfortunate. And we can go into some more detail on that a little bit if you'd like. But that one probably stuck out as a highlight for me. And there were so many bills that came through. And I think Perry's going to talk a little bit about some of those. So I'll kind of back up because I can just keep going if somebody doesn't tell me to stop.
Thanks for bringing that up. I know a lot of us were talking about the fact that we as Coloradans voted that if there was going to be an increase in taxes, it first had to come to us as voters. And somehow this Democratic majority legislature found a way to circumvent the will of the people. And now they're calling these increases fees, which that was the loophole. Am I correct?
You're correct.
So
That's, I mean, it's the age-old argument, a tax or a fee. We tend to look as a fee, as a tax on somebody. If you're going to get something for that, or if the state's going to spend that money on something within the state, quite frankly, we look at that as a tax. I look at that as a tax. And it was also an attack on Tabor, one of the things that we've all hung our hat on for many, many years to protect the taxpayers. And really, Tabor is so simple when you break it down. It's just merely asking the voters for their approval, just their permission for us as legislators to go spend money on their behalf. And they knew these bills would not pass that muster, so therefore they called them a fee, set up new enterprises, which that gets into quite a bit of minutia, but we can do that if you'd like. But overall, what they basically did is just circumvented the taxpayer and said, we're going to put fees on them.
Yeah, I think that's really important for Colorado voters to understand clearly that the will of the people was circumvented. We will be paying more for gas. We will be paying more for delivery fees. We will be paying more out of pocket for the things that we use every single day. And that's a bottom line. And we're going to feel the effects of that. And I think it's important for voters to remember this next time it's time to vote next year, on legislators who will respect Coloradans and what we say we want. And sometimes these things get snuck under the radar. We're all very busy. People were recovering from COVID. They're trying to get jobs. And when these things happen so fast and with such force, a lot of times it goes unnoticed. But I think people will start to pay attention when they already are paying attention at the gas pump. So, okay, Representative Will, let's go to you. What's on your radar?
Thank you. Let me do some follow-up with that Senate Bill 260, because Senator Scott's exactly right. And that bill was a total end around to avoid going to the voters to get approval for that, in those so-called fees and enterprises that I think they created 4 or 5 enterprises within that bill to avoid some of the laws on the 100 million under 100 million to become an enterprise. So there was some real end around stuff done with that bill, and it's gonna cost Colorado taxpayers and our people trying to make a living and going to work it is not going to help families of Colorado. And we tried and tried, and you mentioned at the very beginning, and about the 500 bills. I want to be good, real transparent, and that Senator Scott and I, we didn't pass 500 and some bills because we didn't vote for most of those bills. The majority passes those bills, and so they become law. But it's not. I can tell you that it's an all-out attack on rural Colorado with most of those bills, and the districts that Senator Scott and I represent, we don't want that. But it's 41 to 24 in the House and 20 to 15 in the Senate, and so we get steamrolled on those bad bills that don't help generally Coloradans, and then those that don't help rural Colorado, we get steamrolled on those as well. So I wanted to be clear on that. We didn't pass 500 and some bills because you can go back and look at our votes. They got passed, but a heck of a lot of them in the House for 41-24 got passed, and in the Senate, it's 2015 or whatever. So I want to make that clear.
Representative Will, before you go on, explain to the viewers the land mass that's represented by rural and western Colorado and the voice that you guys have.
Yeah, basically, I mean, so in the House, there's about six rural legislators, okay? And maybe that's even a stretch, but rural legislators, and they tend to call anyone outside of the Front Range and all that as rural, but there's a lot of districts in the urban area that they're a mile wide and 4 miles long, and I have 3 counties. I'm 3.5 hours to the north end of my district. That's driving, right? You can't walk my district. So what Senator Scott and I and others, rural legislators here, we have, we represent 90+% of the land mass, but we're less. I know in the House, I can't speak for the Senate. In the House, we're less than 10% of the representation. So represent 90+% of the land mass, less than 10% representation by the people that live in those land mass in those rural areas. So, but the other side tends to call these resort towns rural, and in my opinion, they're really not. They don't have the same rural issues. They have some, but they don't have the same rural issues or the economic situations that a lot of these rural districts have that like we represent. But yeah, so I'm 75% of the population of the state lives within 25 miles of I-25, and that's kind of reflected down there at the legislature. Is that we represent the landmass, but we really don't have a voice in that respect in numbers. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep, that was what it's really important for voters to understand, because a lot of our agriculture and oil and gas is outside of Denver metro area. It's really important that we understand how we make our money in the state. But go ahead and tell us about a piece of legislation that's on your heart right now.
Okay, so you said pick out some of my highlight bills, I guess. If I sign my name to them, I like the bill. It's a good bill. It helps rural Colorado, or it helps all of Colorado. So I don't sign on the bill unless it does that. I have a pretty good criteria for saying yeah or nay on those, and those bills that help everyone, I like those. But I got on some water bills, some emerging technologies for water management, which is huge in our drought times right now in Western Colorado. Anything for trying to maintain Colorado on the west, or water on the western slope. So I've done a lot of that in my bills, but the emerging technology for water management was one I really liked. I did the WOOF funding. That's kind of switching gears a little bit, but House Bill 1243. That's so as you well know, Prop 114 passed narrowly by less than 1% or whatever, but just the same. It passed. Did not pass in rural Colorado, in none of those counties, but it passed. And so I didn't think it was fair that sportsmen foot the bill on wolf introduction in the state of Colorado. So 1243 was that money to do that wolf introduction comes out of general fund money. And so I was very proud of that bill. I think it's one that protects the sportsmen, our hunters and fishermen, our kind of our hook and bullet club of Colorado that pays for all conservation. And so I think that was a good bill. I also had a Senate Bill 249 that was a Keep Colorado Wild annual pass bill. A little bit of controversy on that, but we need to somehow find a way to fund this, and I felt that was a good one. Another one was concerning, especially like rural Colorado, the backcountry search and rescue. That was House or Senate Bill 245. That was a great bill, something that's much needed by our counties, all counties, but in more particular the rural counties. And rural jumpstart, that was Senate Bill 229. And Senator Scott's very well familiar with rural jumpstart. I did a lot of stuff with the just transition funding, which that can be controversial as well, but the way our counties have been impacted by the loss of energy jobs, we've got to do something to stimulate the economies in this. I mean, it's at the legislature, and I know Senator Scott would agree with me there. It's just a war on our rural economies. And I've got counties that I represent that over 80% of the county revenue comes from energy. And when you're that dependent, it's pretty rough. These counties are going through some tough times, especially a couple of them. I got one county that's over 80% and one just a skosh over 60% of the revenue. So I supported all those bills with just transition, rural jumpstart, some other stuff I did on help out the counties, electronic recording technology, especially these smaller rural counties that it's really beneficial for them. They don't have the equipment stuff to do what they do for electronic recording. So that was a great one. I love that one. Helped out some pharmacies. I like that, some rural pharmacies. A bill on that one. Some of them were some sunset things, like the dental hygienist bill I was on. So when you spoke earlier about the 500 bills, there's a whole lot of them that are sunset bills that are good stuff that needs to be redone. And I don't consider those any new law or anything. They're just continuing on with a program that's been successful in the past. And that the dental hygienist specialized function bill was a great one. I heard from all my rural dental folks and, oh geez, we got to have this. So
Representative Will, yeah, I know there were a lot of conversations around healthcare in rural Colorado and Western Colorado, and what impacts you differently compared to the Denver metro area. And you were talking about oil and gas and mentioning Senator Scott. And can you jump in and talk a little bit, Senator Scott, about maybe some additional bills around, oil and gas?
Sure. I think the overriding issue was that we really didn't see bills to help promote any type of our energy sector that we already have in Colorado. What we saw were a lot of bills to try to promote an agenda or an ideology of what people believe energy should be. And that gets into the green energy discussion, the wind and solar. We actually got, which seems crazy, we've been trying to get water power as part of that portfolio, and we finally made some headway in that. But there's no discussion of anything beyond that, whether it be nuclear fusion, micronuclear, all those things that the future looks like. Even the guy we saw go up in the rocket today, Jeff Bezos, has invested billions of dollars into nuclear fusion, along with his buddy Bill Gates, who would probably in our world be considered very liberal. They're buying up old power plants in Wyoming, and they're going to work on getting these this nuclear fusion and micro nuclear off the ground, because even they, as liberal as they may be, understand that wind and solar cannot carry the ball. We're seeing that right now with the calls on the reservoirs that we're talking about. Well, we haven't talked about them yet, but on Blue Mesa, we're going to see an 8-foot drop. I can't remember the exact numbers, 125,000 acre feet, something in that range, which is massive amounts of water to keep the Glen Canyon Dam operating to produce electricity for the southern part of the United States. All of that's well and good. But because we will not look at bigger technologies or look at a bigger picture, adding different things to our energy mix, it's creating these problems. If they had enough nuclear or micronuclear working in those markets, or natural gas power plants, we wouldn't be having this problem right now. They wouldn't be drawing our water necessarily because we're tied to these federal compacts between Lake Powell, Lake Mead, and the Upper Basin, which is where we're at, which is a very deep discussion. And Perry's a better expert of water than I am, but there's a massive amount of things we should look at. There were bill on top of bills on top of bills to promote the ideology of a smaller group. That's basically what it was. And that can be transit, that can be electric vehicles, which is always a fun discussion because, and I think Perry would agree with me, I don't have a problem with electric vehicles. I could care less if that's what somebody wants to drive. But I don't want to see us mandating and forcing people to do that against their will, number one, and against the economics that make any sense for them where they live. And in rural Colorado, it just makes no sense at this point, unless you want to live in Grand Junction and drive around in an EV. I could care less. It's a good technology. There's nothing wrong with it. But what about hydrogen? We don't even talk about hydrogen vehicles. And if you'll notice, the legislature never really talks about something that is not subsidized. Wind and solar are subsidized technologies. So they don't want to even discuss micronuclear. Let me give you a quick example of how crazy this got. Senate Bill 230. Everybody that's watching, please write that one down. Senate Bill 230. Now, what that bill was the ex-CEO of the Colorado Energy Office, who works for the governor, developed a program called a Green Energy Bank. Did this a couple years ago. He then left the Colorado Energy Office and went to a private firm, and he lives in a little town called Ridgway, Colorado. If you're familiar with Western Colorado, it's probably population 3,000 or 4,000. It's not a very big place. It's kind of a tourist trap, if you will. That's where he lives. So they wrote a bill that this group, which they're calling a Green Energy Bank, it's a $40 million grant. He personally gets $30 million. It's one person. He's never even filed a federal nonprofit. He's got a 501c3 nonprofit. He's never even filed a what they call a 990. It's a grant. It's a $30 million grant for one guy that lives in a condo in Ridgway, Colorado, to help his green energy bank. Furthermore, we find out, and we tell our colleagues, on the opposite of the aisle, district court cases are going against this guy for civil theft in Denver. We brought that up to him, said, gosh, slow down, take a look at this. We know we can't stop him from doing these kind of programs, but hey, wait a minute, tap the brakes here. Let's be smart about this stuff. We were able to amend the bill just a little bit in the Senate to get a little more accountability for this guy. But that's about it. The press wrote a little bit about it. It's been out there. I think Joey Bunch did a piece, I think last week on it. But that's the crazy level that we went to promote one technology, which, let's be honest about this, Priscilla, you're the youngest one in the room, we can tell. But that technology is older than you are. Solar and wind is nothing new. It's not a new technology. Hell, it might be as old as Perry. I don't know. But it's well, he's going to get me for that. Yeah, I know. But it's old technology. There's so much new technology we don't even talk about. Because again, it's not being subsidized by the federal government nor the state government. So it's non-existent. We do these craziness. I mean, can you imagine what we could have done for K-12, what we could have done for the agriculture community, what we could have done for transportation with an additional $30 million. And there's no strings attached. I mean, it's just, you look at things like that happen, and that's just one of many that took place, where this federal stimulus money just got wasted, literally wasted. We had an opportunity. I'm going to finish with this real quick. We had an opportunity with 5 billion plus coming to Colorado from the feds to fix every fiscal problem known to the state of Colorado. We could have fixed K-12. We could have funded higher education. We could have helped agriculture. We could have done water projects. We could have done infrastructure. We could have done so many things. To put that in perspective, that's like a cruise ship in a pond. We were awash with money, and we still are. We haven't even spent most of it. We had billions of dollars that we could have utilized to make everybody's life in Colorado better. And what the Democrats chose to do was to only work with this ideological group that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and really, really, really hurt the people in Colorado. And to your point earlier, hopefully voters wake up and energize and fix some of this problem by getting rid of some of these people in the 22 election and beyond. And I'll get off my soapbox.
No. I mean, Senator Scott, I think that's the message when you're gifted so much money to your state and you have the ability to fix all of the things you described, and that doesn't happen for some reason. We need to change the lawmakers, because when you change the lawmakers, you change the laws. It's as simple as that. And people need to be knowledgeable about what's being done in the state legislature. I was just watching I try to watch the White House briefings every single day. And today we learned that the president may be asking for an additional increase to the debt. And I'm like, why? This makes no sense that we're increasing our debt trillions and trillions of dollars more. And like you said, the government didn't even spend the money. All the states haven't even spent the money from the first stimulus package, from what I understand. And now it's like more and more money, and money, either we're printing it or we're borrowing it, but there's no checks and balances for the federal government like we have here in our state. You know, I ask people all the time, do you prefer legislation that requires us to balance our budget every year? And people like the idea, but that comes with some decisions and sacrifices. And if we're going to pay more and go into more debt, you know, that needs to be a bigger conversation. But that's really disappointing that there's all of this money coming into the state, and where are we? And it remains to be seen, even for me when I go back to school this fall as a teacher. So Representative Will, I'm actually on the Planning Commission in Douglas County. We talk a lot about water, and that's a big conversation. And I'm still learning a lot and understanding how precious water is in Colorado. And it's also surprising to see how much water goes out of Colorado. But we have Colorado residents who don't even have good drinking water. And there are a lot of decisions that need to be made to make sure that even Coloradans have access to good drinking water. I'm not really familiar with your water bills. Can you break it down a little bit more and talk about how important water is in our state?
Well, yes, thank you, Priscilla. I mean, you hear it all the time, the cliche. I mean, water is the lifeblood, and obviously Colorado is a headwater state, no question. Got the Continental Divide right here in our normal years with our good snowpack, and we can get into the Colorado, the compact and Colorado River compact and those implications downriver. But we're at a point. I think it was in the last year when the Yampa went on the call, first time ever in history, and then that for our water users up in a good portion of my district, when there's a cameo call, that shuts them off. So it's just critical. We can talk about Trans Mountain diversions, but so much of our West Slope water goes to the East Slope. And it was years ago, but we just keep developing on the Front Range, right? And there's more and more need for water. And we don't have it anymore. And I think Senator Scott mentioned the money to do storage and even conservation efforts and that, but we need more storage. So when we have good years, that just drawing down a Blue Mason 100 and whatever thousand of acre feet of water, that's a huge amount of water. When you go 8 feet in Blue Mesa, that's a huge amount of water. And we need more storage and better planning. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff with the water plan here in Colorado. You know, our river districts, I think we're doing good and the best we can, but there's just so much demand for water in this state, and then more specifically the demand for the east slope, that we've got to be extremely careful. And you know, there's the demand management. I don't know if you've heard much about that, but that's a little bit scary to me on the west slope. But water is, it's a lifeblood. You know, the old saying about, you know, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. We're there. We're there.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So we've hit,
That's
I mean, like we could talk a lot about water. I mean, it's fascinating how into the weeds you can get with water collection and wells and downstream and who owes who water. I mean, like people have no idea unless, you know, Senator Scott, you're running for commissioner. This is my first time being on planning commission, and just the conversations around these topics, we don't really understand how these things impact our neighbors and neighboring counties, and just our livelihood. Like you said, water. I encourage people to do some research on water bills and go to their county commissioners' websites and take a look at some of the conversations that take place. It's so far, my experience has been that's one of the most important, most frequent conversations that we have when we're making decisions about growth in an area. It's like, is the water sufficient? You know, how many wells can we dig, and all of that stuff. So that's extremely important. Okay, Senator Scott, let's kick it back to you. What's another bill that you think is going to impact Coloradans that we need to know about?
Well, you know, there's so many to choose from. We just saw negative impact on negative impact. We visited just a few seconds before we got on about Senate Bill 293, which, if folks remember back to the last election, we had a ballot question about what was called the Gallagher Amendment, which was supposed to, back in its day, was supposed to balance and help keep lower residential property taxes, and the business owners of the commercial property would pay more. And then, of course, we got rid of that. And I guess I felt like the Lone Ranger at times, but I was one of the people saying, no, let's not get rid of Gallagher, because what we feared would happen was the legislators would then be setting the rates for Colorado or for residential and commercial. Didn't hear a lot about it until kind of the end of the legislative session. And lo and behold, because there was a ballot initiative percolating out there, which I believe is still going on, to help lock in residential rates, lock in commercial rates, and try to help people stabilize. Because again, you got to be able to plan for the future, whether you're in business or you're a residential property owner. And lo and behold, a bill flies up to try to basically to it was a fly in the ointment for that ballot measure. So they were trying to give us tax relief to the tune of about $1 billion or more per year as taxpayers. Well, the legislatures, they stepped in and said, no, we have a better idea. And that was to basically put language in a bill that would muddy up the waters if that other measure passes. And personally, I believe both will pass. I mean, the bill passed, and anytime you put something on the ballot that said, would you like to lower your taxes, for an example, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or unaffiliated, people vote for it. So therefore, we're gonna have that coming our way in this November. So what in effect took place is, yes, now the legislature is trying to set your rates for your residential and your commercial property. One of my biggest concerns was agriculture, because they always say they're not going to, you know, agriculture is exempt. Agriculture is exempt. Well, I think we're learning the hard way that agriculture is not exempt from any of this craziness that's been going on. And I'm going to let Perry maybe talk about Senate Bill 87, which went after farm workers, which is just the craziest thing ever. But this particular bill, this 293, is going to impact, it's going to hit people in the wallet on their property taxes. No doubt in my mind. And even if they both pass, there'll be measures that come out and cost you more. And you know, there's an old saying that everything that happens at the Capitol and the monies that come in is all fungible, which basically means every legislative body over the next 100 years has the ability to change things. Just because we pass a law that spends $100 on something, for an example, doesn't mean we won't go back next year and say, no, we don't want to spend that $100 again, and we stop it. So my concern is now that future legislatures, especially if we don't win some elections, that's a key point, will again go to the well and say, wait a minute, we left ag, for an example, alone in this measure, but guess what? It's time for farmers to pay more than they're paying. And all these things, it's like, what's that old saying, death by 10,000 paper cuts? That's the environment we live in, whether you're in the oil and gas industry, if you're in the agriculture industry, if you're in civil construction, vertical construction. All these little things are a paper cut at a time of taking something from you. And that's so important that voters understand that when they start thinking about who they're going to put in office in the future. We've got to make sure we get people that are willing to hold the line. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be incredibly tough. With redistricting coming up, which is another issue that's going on, where are we really going to be from the federal level down? Well, we just don't know. So it's important that people stay engaged and pay attention.
So because there were so many bills and I tried to keep up with where they were, I'm a little confused because I heard there's this ballot initiative to reduce taxes by, I think, 1.3%, but then I heard property taxes are going to go up starting next year for the next 19 years. Like it'll keep going up. So okay, I'm seeing head nods. Okay. So what Colorado homeowners and property owners and landowners and business owners need to understand is that you, again, will start to see the impact of these tax hikes no matter what you see on the ballot. It's not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help us God. Like it's just this language to kind of tease us into thinking, oh, it's a 1.3% tax reduction, but really there's this other language that's going to cause us to have to pay more taxes, which makes it very difficult if you're not making more money in income, like with inflation. So it's not really helping Coloradans at the end of the day. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding what's getting ready to happen to us starting next year.
Well, and if you don't mind, I think one of the things you're going to start to see, and we're already starting to see it, is because of the nature of the legislature being controlled, they call it centralized government. When you have one party that controls every branch of government, that's what we're living today. Now that we're into that situation where every branch of Colorado government is controlled by one party, they have free reign to do whatever they want to, and especially to rural Colorado. But I think what you're going to start to see is you're going to start seeing ballot initiatives now to reverse what the state legislature has done. Example, we've talked about the gas tax, which they call a fee, but we all know it's a tax. I believe you're going to see a ballot measure to reduce your gas tax coming up. And that will reduce what they have put into place. It's not the way the government probably should run, but if that's the way it has to be, that's the way it has to be until we can move that needle another direction. But I think you're going to see a lot of ballot measures that are going to be designed to reverse what the state legislature has done.
But what do you say to people who say, oh, well, we need all this money to fix our roads, we need all of this money, and so we're the bad guys on the conservative side, arguing against these tax hikes. So what's the argument? What's the counter argument?
Well, the first thing I point to is the bill that they passed that supposedly was about fixing roads and bridges. People need to read it. They really do need to read it. And they'll understand within the first 20 or 30 pages, it has nothing to do with fixing a road or a bridge. It just does not. It has to do with a whole lot of other things that they didn't anticipate and they don't want to pay for. People in Western Colorado understand we need a lot of maintenance on our roads, for an example. Paving, restructuring. We don't have any new projects. We're not building a new freeway from Grand Junction to Gunnison. We're not doing those things. And we never will, more than likely. But we need maintenance, which we just don't get. Even the Front Range, quite frankly, doesn't have that many new projects. Yes, they need some widening of roads. Yes, they need more maintenance. But all these things are optically sold to consumers and to buyers, and you're not getting what you're paying for. Let's put it that way.
Okay, Representative Will, what do you have to say?
Well, along those lines, I have to say that the majority party, and Senator Scott has much more experience than I do at the legislature. But from my appearance, in my third year down there, the majority party they were very brazen about the bills they introduced. I just, I was shocked on some of them. And, Senator Scott mentioned earlier about, I'm not anti-renewable either. I think we need a whole diversity and portfolio of energy options, right? But we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, because that's what we're doing in in the oil and gas industry. And and even we talk about water storage projects. They won't even allow us to use hydro as a renewable, right? Can't even be classified renewable as hydro, which makes zero sense to me. But it can't be done. So, and then there's these mandated timelines, and it's just pushing their green agenda. And in the process, and I'm not saying, heck, I want, all of us want, a healthy environment, a great place to raise your kids, clean air, all that. We all want that. But this is pushing an agenda at the expense of a whole lot of other things, and not listening. So it's, I'd say, very brazen, and there's so many just social, environmental justice. And the one thing we haven't mentioned is that, which really hits me hard, is the majority party is so soft on crime. And I don't think the majority of Americans, or none of them I know, think we should be soft on crime. And just watch the news and see what's happening, and see if being soft on crime is working for us. I don't think so. And would you agree, Senator Scott? There's a whole lot of soft on crime bills down there.
Yeah, there really were, Perry, and it was unfortunate. We pushed back the best we could. Again, we don't have the votes, we have a voice. But it was very surprising to me, even with, we have one senator whose son was murdered several years ago, and she actually would fight against them on something like this. But the next morning, it was back to business as usual, which really shocked me, because she up close and personal understands that crime is so high and it's causing so many problems. That we saw statistics on top of statistics, and people testifying, explaining to us just what that's getting us, this defund the police idea, all the different measures. And again, it's sad, because the victims don't have a voice any longer. The criminals do. And I can't even believe, I'm sorry, I just can't believe even Democrats vote for some of these folks, as loose as they are with crime. It's just unbelievable. And we try to just look at things logically and say, okay, if somebody's committed a crime, there needs to be some penalty. They need to pay for what they've done, take responsibility. The Democrats in my chamber don't even want that. They want nothing to do with somebody paying for what they've done. And they don't care about the victims and what they've done to the victims.
Representative Perry Will, I was really pleased to see you sponsor a mental health bill. Can you talk, you spoke very passionately about the importance of supports for mental health. Can you talk about that bill?
Yes, absolutely. And I stand behind that. I mean, the mental health is where it's at, and that brings us into the three gun bills that they brought. And I think that when it was 1298, 1299, 98 was the background checks, and I'll get into that. 99 was creating the Office of Gun Violence. I don't know about that. That's a whole nother hour or two conversation, Priscilla. But then the 256 was the Senate Bill 256, and that was the local regulations, down on firearms and gun regulations at the local level. But so part of that, the behavioral health is I think that's where our problems are. I'm going to tell you a little story, and Senator Scott will agree. I know that. I grew up around firearms my entire life. Um, Went to school with them in the gun rack in the back window with a pickup. Didn't lock your doors. Didn't roll up your windows unless you thought it was going to rain or snow. There was never any issues. People around guns, they understood them, they respected them, they handled them, appropriately. Um, Society's changed. There wasn't people being shot in those days, especially in my youth. You didn't hear about that kind of stuff. Look what's happening in Aurora. Here in the news of late. But so something's changed, right? And I think it's respect. That's what it is, respect. But but there's so much of the mental health aspect of this, be it the situation, Boulder, you just name them, wherever. It's behavioral health related, and that's why I think it's huge. I want to put money into behavioral health programs, and to help people that need help. I mean, it's not, and it gives communities an option to provide help to those people, and this isn't. But yeah, so I think that was the bill was 1281. No, that was the behavioral health. That was on sorry, I was on that bill for the behavioral health one on the disaster program. Might have to look and see what the number was. And they're so hard to remember.
You don't remember 500 and something bill numbers? No, I mean, to your argument. Really, well, listen, it's clear, not just in Colorado, but all across America, that safety is the #1 priority for parents. And community members. Like we're living in a time where
766.
What number was it?
766. Sorry.
766. Okay, there we go. But
and it's very helpful.
I'm impressed you found that number so quickly, though. But it's just really, really clear that Coloradans want to be safe. We need to be safe. And we have a movement out there of a small faction of people who, think it's okay to riot or go into neighborhoods or to remove SROs out of schools. Like it's not a good idea, because rather than defunding the police, we need to put more resources into our law enforcement and make sure that they're trained and that our schools are safe. And so that is definitely the battle of ideas of, what should we do to ensure that our schools are safe? Our communities are safe. I was in Denver Sunday at the Law Enforcement Appreciation Day at the Civic Center. And I was so sad because I remember a Denver where you could walk downtown, it was clean, but what I see are gates around the library, like a library, it's gates around a park, trash everywhere, people outside doing drugs. And it's sad because you can't even get to the monuments. And I look at our beautiful Capitol that was vandalized. It's not the Denver I remember. And the fact that, a lot of people didn't feel even safe to come down to the Capitol City or to Civic Center Park to say thank you to the law enforcement says a lot about where we are. And I would love to see us get back to a place where we don't have these gates and barriers, where we can walk downtown and not be afraid. And if people are listening and other legislators are listening on the other side, like that's what Coloradans deserve. We deserve to live in a safe city. And we have these two great legislators here who are working to try to make Colorado not only physically safe, but mentally safe, to support people so that we can address these needs. So I appreciate that.
No, thank you for that. And it's sad too, because I think Perry hit on it. We don't know where it went wrong. I wish we could point our finger at something, but it's just that loss of right and wrong. To his point about us being in our classes in high school, I can remember at Rifle High School, we had, our FFA class, our Future Farmers of America class. And we were taught not only like gun safety, for an example, but we just had generational discussions, if you will, about right and wrong. And we learned those principles, and somehow that's gotten separated from our educational system. And I put that on parents, quite frankly, because parents need to teach their own kids. But right and wrong, it's such a simple concept that for whatever reasons has drifted away from us. And we see that on the streets when we see the news. There's a generation or a group, I don't know that it's a generation, but a group of people that just have no respect for those basic principles of right and wrong.
Yeah. So guys, we're running out of time. I know we have a lot. I want to, it's okay if we go over a few minutes, but I want to make sure we hit some legislation that you really want to make sure we talk about before we sign off. Representative Will?
So let me finish up and follow up with what Senator Scott just said. It's all about, and I've said this as many times, about it's not that hard to raise kids and raise responsible adults and socially adjusted adults. Is teach them self-respect, respect for others, and give them a little bit of ambition. You can kick them out the door. And I think that's where we're lacking. That's where we're lacking. So anyway, I wanted to say that. But I don't know what other bills. I talked, and I don't want to be negative, because maybe a little bit we have been, but we've talked a lot of positive things, a lot of positive bills that we've, that have happened this year. And there some of those are, and those bipartisan bills that are good for all Colorado, we all get behind those. And because, and you see it in the Senate and you see it in the House, but there's a lot of bills go out of the House 65-0. Well, when they go out 65-0, you probably got a pretty good bill that's probably going to be beneficial to every corner of Colorado, rural, urban. And we talk a lot about the rural-urban divide, and I see that. But like you mentioned, I'm on Ag, Livestock and Water Committee. We tend to get just good bills in there. They just tend to be good bills, that are beneficial to ag, they're beneficial to urban, and obviously if you're an ag and you're a producer, urban benefits from that, right? Because we all eat, and we all need a jug of milk, and we all need I guess sausage for breakfast, or if you're vegetarian, you need other produce that ag producers produce. So there's been a lot of those. And the other comment I would like to talk about is, and not necessarily Bill, but there was earlier on in the conversation, Senator Scott talked about contractors and and how we're getting hurt on the taxes and small businesses, and we really tried to help small business out. But I have to say that the other party didn't really do that for small business. And, I know Republicans are saying, hey, we're post-COVID, these businesses are struggling. They've been shut down, people are out of work. They can't go to work because the business shut down, and get people back to work and those businesses going again. And I saw a fair bit of it where they didn't want to give an inch because they didn't want to give up any revenue or give up those tax breaks. And you mentioned the federal government and about printing money. Thank God the state can't print money, because we'd really be in a fix if we were like the feds. Son of a gun. So, but as far as other bills, fire and fire mitigation is a huge thing from last year. Again, this year, talk about forest management. I had a couple of forest management bills, and then also to create the fire commission. I was on that with Representative McCluskey. That was a really good bill, really supported by the fire commission, and the acronym just escaped me, but anyway, and then any forest health bill I pretty much supported in any kind of thing on fire mitigation. I had, I think I was on, I know there was the increased biomass utilization bill measures to do that. And that was House Bill 1180. And we gained some pretty good traction on that, and amended it a little bit, made it a lot better bill. But I was on 3 of those bills that were involving fire management, mitigation, and forest health. That's huge. You know, I think you've probably been breathing quite a bit of smoke over in Denver here lately, and we certainly have here on the West Slope as well. And then last summer was huge. I'm also on the interim committee, fire management interim committee. That's my second time around on that, and we've come up with some pretty good bills out of that committee. But I did want to talk about some real positive things, and I think the forest health things, you know, from pine beetle to the pine beetle, the spruce beetle, and the drive through Colorado, you see all that, and now you see a whole lot of it burned. But we need to get on top of that. I can tell you, I say it all the time. You know, you can cut it, graze it, or watch it burn. And we've been too much preservationist in forest management, in my opinion, across Colorado. And preservation just doesn't work. You know, we need to manage our forest, and we'd have much healthier, better forests. But that's when we do get these lightning strikes or man-made fires, and they just burn forever. It's because of the fuel load out there. And so that there were several bills this year that went through the legislature that were fire connected, fire-wise, and fire management that I can't remember. Maybe you can, Senator Scott. I think they all pretty much passed and went through, even the money ones that needed funding. And I think we found money to help that out. So I think all of them passed, and I was involved with 3 of them.
Yeah, you and I, Representative Will, share a dear friend, and I have learned so much about rural Colorado from her because she owns property out in Breckenridge, and it wasn't on my radar because I live, you know, in the Denver metro area, that fires are a real fear of homeowners when you get out of the metro area. And I want to say, for those of us who live in the metro area who love to go up to the mountains and camp and do all of this stuff, like, just be really cautious and thoughtful about when you're starting a fire or starting something. Just, if you don't put it out, you put homeowners in danger. And this is a real issue that a lot of us, it's not on our radar because we're around concrete all the time. But we need to understand what's happening in the rest of the state and how it impacts other people. So thanks for bringing that up and passing those bills. Senator Scott, what are some of your final thoughts?
Well, again, I want to thank everybody that's watching us, and thanks to Perry for taking some time, and you guys for doing what you're doing at the party to help kind of instigate us Republicans to kind of come back to a different space than we've been in the last few years. I think I'd wrap up by saying one of the things I have learned at the state level when we're in the minority as we are today is that sometimes we can't really do anything with legislation. We may have a great idea, but we know it's just going to get slammed and it takes a lot of time. And I've started to spend a good amount of time, and I have over the last 3 or 4 years, really working on efficiency and accountability for our state agencies. CDOT, I'm on them all the time, trying to get them a more efficient agency, pushing them really, really hard. Perry could talk about Parks and Wildlife. Every single agency in the state of Colorado can find efficiency. I mean, I've made the comment, if I was voted in as the head person, if that would be governor, so to speak, I think I would tell people from every agency, you're going to cut your budget by 20% and watch them do backflips and cry and moan and groan about that. But I know they can do it. Efficiencies at every level of government, from city to state to county to school boards, can get efficiencies out of government. It's just there. But they just have to have the will to do it. They just have to. And until and unless they start to do that, we're just going to have this continuing drumbeat of fees and taxes and concerns when the general public really understands it's no different than us sitting on our back porch and deciding how much money we're going to spend in the next year. We all have to do it, and we cut where we don't want to sometimes. We don't get that new pickup truck, or we don't get that car, or go on that vacation because we just have to. That's responsibility. That's part of what Perry was talking about, is we have to get back to a responsible society to try to help people start to understand that. So I spent a good amount of time not worrying about bills so much as really looking at these agencies. And man, I can tell you from experience, they absolutely hate it. Bureaucrats do not want to be responsible to anybody, especially a legislator or the general public. They just don't like it. And so, quite frankly, it makes it a lot of fun because you can go out there and go get them. So I do enjoy that a little bit. And before I go, the one thing I cannot let happen, because I had no idea what the dress code was, I can't let Perry Will upstage me. So I'm going to wrap it up by putting on the hat and saying, all right, Perry, game on, buddy.
Man, I should have gotten my hat out of the closet, because I did get a new hat. Okay, so next event that you guys are there, I'm wearing my cowboy hat that I got from Texas.
There we go.
And so the last thing I want to say, I love your hat. Did you guys, man, looking really sharp and representing Colorado. I'm very proud of both.
That's what we do.
Well, I want to say to those who are watching, when the next legislative session comes up, you know, these gentlemen are very responsive, and there are a lot of forces talking to our legislators, giving their ideas. And so we want to make sure that the constituents of these gentlemen hear from you. It's really important that it's not just from the people who are paid to lobby or outside interest groups, but that they hear from the actual taxpayers. And just know that you have a voice and you're powerful. And there's always a very thoughtful and respectful way of communicating. Tell your story. That's what I always tell voters when they email or call, you know, just tell your story and why this is important to you. And these gentlemen, I know, because I've spoken to you guys several times, are very responsive and want to do what's right for Coloradans and make good decisions. And, you know, I have this saying in education, you might have your say, but you don't always get your way, right? So, you know, you guys have to represent people of all diverse thoughts, and some people are going to be happy and some people are not going to be happy, but I know that you guys are good in the heart and that you're going to make the very best decision that you can, with the least amount of damage as possible to the people that you represent. And so for that, I thank you so much for this time. I know we could have gone for many, many more hours, but thank you so much for taking this time today.
You're very welcome.
All right, you guys be safe, and I'll see you soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.